What if I told you that calling the police on yourself could be the biggest mistake of your life? This grandmother did exactly that, and it destroyed everything. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. She wasn't the victim in this story. A 15-year-old kid just saved his sister's life with stolen antibiotics. The fever was 103 degrees. She couldn't swallow. She couldn't even cry anymore because her body had no fluids left to make tears. But when Grandma found that pill bottle, she grabbed her phone and made a call that would change everything forever. She called the police on her own grandchildren. Now here's where this gets really twisted. This wasn't about protecting the kids. This was about something much darker. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the people who claim to love us the most can be the most dangerous. But first, let me tell you how we got here, because this nightmare started with something that sounds almost innocent. After their mom died in a car accident, these two kids had nowhere to go. Dad had already disappeared years ago, so they moved in with Grandma. Seemed safe, right? Wrong. Day one, Grandma threw Lucy's asthma inhaler straight into the trash. Not just the inhaler, the fluoride toothpaste, children's Tylenol, everything. She said modern medicine was evil. Prayer and herbs would fix everything. But here's what Grandma didn't know. Her 15-year-old grandson was already planning his first crime. He cut a hole in his mattress and hid one inhaler. Every night, when 12-year-old Lucy couldn't breathe, he'd sneak into her room and give her a few puffs, just enough to stop the wheezing. Lucy thought the eucalyptus oil was finally working. The brother let her believe the lie because if she knew about the hidden medicine, she might accidentally tell Grandma, and that would end everything. But this secret was about to get much more dangerous. Lucy got strep throat. Half her class had it, so the brother knew exactly what it was. But Grandma made her gargle salt water and put onions in her socks. For 3 days, Lucy got worse. She stopped eating because swallowing hurt too much. Her lips cracked and bled from dehydration. She couldn't even cry anymore. The brother stayed up all night Googling death from untreated strep throat under his blanket, reading about kidney failure and rheumatic fever. He couldn't watch his sister die from something that $10 of antibiotics would cure. So, he committed his second crime. He stole $20 from Grandma's purse while she was at church, walked 4 miles to urgent care, lied about his symptoms to get antibiotics, then crushed the pills and mixed them into Lucy's soup. Within 2 days, her fever broke. After a week, she was singing in the shower again. Grandma praised God for the miracle, said it proved doctors were unnecessary. The brother thought he'd gotten away with it, but Grandma was about to find that pill bottle in his backpack. And when she did, she made a decision that reveals something terrifying about human nature. Grandma stood in his doorway holding those antibiotics like they were poison. Her face was purple with rage. But here's what she said next that shows you exactly what kind of person she really was. I'm calling social services. I'll tell them you're giving your sister dangerous substances without consent. They'll put you in juvenile detention and Lucy in foster care. Wait, stop. Think about this for a second. Grandma just threatened to destroy these kids' lives for saving Lucy from strep throat. But here's the part that makes no sense. She's calling the authorities to report medical neglect while she's the one neglecting Lucy's medical needs. It's like a bank robber calling the police to report a robbery. Why would she do this? Because she wasn't thinking about Lucy's safety. She was thinking about control. And she'd rather see these kids separated and traumatized than admit she was wrong about medicine. The sirens were already getting closer. The brother had maybe 10 minutes before their lives exploded. He grabbed Lucy's hand and started packing because he knew they had 2 choices: run away together or get split up in the system. But when those police cars pulled up, something happened that Grandma never expected. 2 officers, an ambulance, and a social worker all showed up at once. Grandma immediately started telling them how the brother had been drugging his sister. She waved that pill bottle around like evidence of a crime. But then Lucy started wheezing. Bad. The stress was triggering her asthma and she couldn't get enough air. The EMTs asked Grandma for Lucy's rescue inhaler. She said, "I don't believe in those things." That's when the brother yelled out about the inhaler hidden in his mattress. The EMT ran to get it and gave it to Lucy. Within minutes, she was breathing normally again. Grandma started screaming that they were poisoning Lucy with chemicals, that prayer would work better. But now everyone could see what was really happening here. The social worker took pictures of the religious pamphlets about faith healing, the cabinet full of mysterious herbs, the trash can where Grandma had thrown away Lucy's preventative medications. After 2 hours of interviews and evidence gathering, the social worker made her decision: emergency removal from the home. The grandmother's denial of necessary medical care constituted neglect under state law. Grandma started screaming about religious persecution, but it was too late. Her own phone call had exposed her. The kids ended up with a foster mom named Opal, who had raised 2 other kids with asthma. She knew about nebulizers and peak flow meters and action plans. On their first night there, Lucy pulled out her inhaler and used it without looking over her shoulder or trying to muffle the sound. For the first time in months, she wasn't wheezing when she lay down to sleep. The brother stayed up all night listening to her breathe normally, finally understanding what regular medical care looked like. At school, Lucy joined the art club and made friends who didn't know anything about their story. She entered a painting in the district contest, a picture of a girl breathing in clouds. She won first place. When they asked her about the steady brushstrokes, she explained that she could paint now because she wasn't shaking from trying to breathe. But the most shocking part of the story is what happened with Grandma. Grandma had to complete parenting classes and medical education to get supervised visits. She walked out of the first therapy session after 10 minutes. But something strange happened. She kept trying. After months of classes, she showed up to a visit with a notebook full of notes about asthma triggers and medications. Instead of calling them poison, she'd highlighted sections about how untreated asthma causes permanent lung damage. She had written "I'm sorry" in the margin. A year later, they had their first unsupervised visit. When Lucy pulled out her inhaler before running to the playground, Grandma nodded and said, "That was smart thinking to prevent an attack during exercise." The kids were eventually adopted by Opal. Grandma didn't fight it. She finally understood that being their grandmother meant she didn't have to be their guardian. Lucy joined the track team. At her first meet, she ran 800 meters without stopping once. She came in 3rd place, breathing normally at the finish line. They were completely different people than they'd been that day with the sirens. So here's what this story really teaches us. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most can hurt us the deepest. Not because they're evil, but because they confuse control with care. They'd rather be right than see us healthy. They'd rather maintain their beliefs than save our lives. But here's the part that gives me hope. That 15-year-old brother proved that real love looks different. Real love steals $20 and walks 4 miles in the cold. Real love hides medicine in mattresses and lies to protect someone. Real love chooses someone else's survival over your own safety. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Lucy or her brother, if you're living with someone who puts their beliefs above your basic needs, I want you to know something. You're not betraying anyone by choosing to survive. You're not selfish for wanting medical care or safety or just the right to breathe normally at night. And if you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Grandma, if you've been so focused on being right that you've forgotten what love actually looks like, it's not too late. She figured it out eventually. You can too. But the real question I want to leave you with is this. What would you have done? Would you have had the courage to steal that $20? Would you have made that 4-mile walk? Or would you have watched someone you love suffer because speaking up felt too risky? Think about that, because somewhere right now, someone is hiding medicine in their mattress. Someone is choosing between keeping the peace and keeping someone alive. And maybe, just maybe, they need to know they're not alone.